Okay, I'm going to begin. So, hi everyone, a very warm welcome to SIC's first virtual series, Beat the Limbo. I'm Pritika Nayak, the overall lead for SIC.
And I'm Yashvi from the events team.
We're going to be moderating this session today. So, the SIC basically aims to promote inclusion and accessibility across all events on campus, especially for the differently abled. We're basically doing this series to motivate our audience and keep them optimistic during times of crisis. So, before we begin, I just quickly like to give a few instructions to our audience. We've muted everyone by default so that there's no background disturbance. We kindly request you to switch off your videos and switch it on towards the end of the session so that we can capture a group picture. We also would love to take your questions, so please route them in via the chat box after the session is over, and we'll be happy to take them. We're also live streaming this event on YouTube, so please do encourage your friends to watch it now or later and share the word. So, right, let's get started. So, today I'm thrilled to introduce you to our speaker, Ms. Rahat Sanghavi. Rahat is a trauma informed mental health professional currently running her private practice. She completed her bachelor's in psychology from St. Xavier's College and completed her master's from SNDT University with a clinical specialization. Post that, she worked in a private clinic and focused on neuropsychology and other psychotherapeutic services. So, being a trauma-informed psychologist, Rahas really believes that cultural structures have an impact on mental health, and she believes that social justice is an important component of a mentally healthy society. And she believes that mental health should be accessible for all and offers therapy on a sliding scale. And of course, she adopts an eclectic approach to therapy. So, welcome, Rahat, and over to you.
Yeah, thank you for this introduction. I'm really excited to be here because I love talking about mental health, and I get really excited when people want to be part of this conversation. And it's especially exciting to do this at a Xavier's organized event because Xavier's has been such an important part of my life. So it's great to be here, virtually. I really like the kind of topic you've chosen where it's sustaining mental health because I think that really highlights the focus on actively maintaining your mental health, which is something I think we tend to forget. And right now, when everything is so shitty, like we're going through a really difficult time right now, right? Because we don't have any script on how to deal with something like this. We haven't experienced a pandemic at this level, but it's not just, the threat of the virus. It's so much else that's also been happening. It's the economy. We're worried about our jobs. We're worried about futures. There's so much political strife right now. So this is a really challenging time for us in like our entire society as a whole. So I think it's great that right now we're having a conversation about sustaining our mental health. So something that, I really like to emphasize right now when we talk about how challenging everything is that this is a collective trauma we're all going through. So trauma is, any situation where your nervous system, where your brain body perceives you to lack the resources to cope, where you may feel helpless, where you feel a loss of control. And if we look at the situation we're in right now, there's so many things that are changing on a regular basis, right? So we don't have a lot of control. So every day we're faced with a new challenge, a new threat. And it's important to realize that this is affecting our nervous system. When we look at mental health, we sometimes think about it only with respect to our thoughts and our emotions. And the reason I take a neuropsychotherapeutic approach is because there's a connection between that, right? It's our entire nervous system that's regulating us. It's our nervous system that's responding to the environment. It's our nervous system that's responding to the threat and the challenge we're facing right now. And what happens when our nervous system responds to a threat or a challenge? It gets into protective mode. It gets into defensive mode. It's amazing how our bodies have evolved to protect ourselves, and it's really great to understand that because our bodies are now waiting for us to consciously decide whether a situation is a threatening situation or not. It's jumping into action so fast. So, for all of the psych students out here, you understand it's like the limbic system that's, jumping in to figure out whether this is a threatening situation or not, and then starting a chain of stress arousal. There are different neurotransmitters and hormones released to get you into action to really protect you. Now, this is an amazing mechanism that takes place, but it's also been evolved to help you through very short-term situations. So it's been evolved to kind of help with situations like an animal attack or a specific situation. So your nervous system like has options of either fighting the animal or running away. And if neither of those approaches are working, to shut down so that you don't feel pain when you're attacked. So these are the different mechanisms in place. And they work really well for short-term stresses because you go through that and then you recover from it, and then you've reached equilibrium again. The problem is right now, because the threat is constant, right? It's a chronic threat, it's a chronic challenge we're experiencing. Our nervous system is on high alert constantly. It's perceiving threat in the environment on a daily basis. And the threat doesn't have to be a tangible threat. Like even the threat of the virus, it's not something we're seeing, right? It's where we know it exists. Even the threat of like losing our jobs or not sure what, like, or a lot of our students, I mean, people have planned their future and now you don't know what their future looks like. So that is threatening. That's a challenge. And your nervous system is responding to that. It's trying to figure out how to keep you safe right now. And what happens when you're constantly trying to defend and protect yourself is your body becomes dysregulated. Because when you're responding to this threat, like I said, there are changes in neurotransmitters and hormones, which basically means you're taking away the energy that's dedicated to, essential body services like the immune system, keeping it healthy, or the digestive tract. You're not focusing on that when you're confronted with a threat. If you were confronted with an animal, your body doesn't care about your immune system. It cares about running away right now. So if our nervous system is engaged in that kind of protective mechanism regularly on a chronic basis, it's going to get dysregulated in the sense it's not going to look out for these long-term services anymore. It's just focusing on mobilizing energy to keep you safe in this way. So what's happening is you're going to start, if your nervous system is dysregulated, and it's something that happens over time. It's not one instance of stress that leads to that. It's something that happens over time. And you're going to experience symptoms like racing thoughts, anxiety, overthinking, low mood, also emotional outbursts, mood swings, but also difficulty sleeping, dizziness, gastrointestinal concerns, headaches, chronic pain, a lot of things that don't seem related. But when you view it in terms of your nervous system, all of it is related, right? Your nervous system is regulating all of it. So these are the symptoms that then come up and people try to treat it individually. So you feel like a back pain and you're treating that individually, a headache, or moments of overthinking, and you're trying to just focus on that. It's important to realize all of it is just the nervous system responding to this threat and this challenge. And it, like I said, doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time. And something I really like to emphasize is it's not just this pandemic that's led to mental health concerns or this dysregulation. Even before the pandemic, it's not like we were living in a really healthy society, right? It's not that structures of oppression didn't exist. We were being challenged by so many structures, like, I mean, the way capitalism exists right now, the patriarchy, the fascist governments, all of these things were affecting our nervous system anyway.
Right.
It's just that before the pandemic, we had structures, we had our own coping structures in place that we had kind of evolved to figure out how to navigate those stressors on their own. And, that would look like meeting your friends, going to work, having a routine. And all of these things have suddenly been disrupted because of this new normal that's in place. And I think that's what's kind of really pushed people um, over the edge a little bit. Like we're all experiencing a lot more of these symptoms, or they've intensified even. And as things keep changing, as we're continuing forward, and things keep changing every day, like we honestly have no idea what next week's going to look like in Bombay, right? I mean, the cases might jump, no idea what's going on. So this is the time where we need to start figuring out, okay, my nervous system is dysregulated, I am experiencing this challenge, this huge threat. What can I do to kind of offset this negative effect? And that's where sustaining your mental health comes in. So, when we look at it in terms of the nervous system, we're looking at how there's a threat that you're experiencing. So your nervous system is not feeling safe, because when you're feeling safe, you're able to calm down. You feel, calmer, you're regulated. You're also looking at the aspect of, okay, so I need to figure out how to include safety right now in my life. I need to figure out what techniques I can use to regulate my nervous system. And this is something I want to discuss on how we can kind of work on this to be able to deal with this challenge and threat. Um, and something I really like to emphasize when we're trying to do this is, if on a daily basis we are experiencing stressors and challenges and threats, at no point right now can we expect ourselves to be 100% mentally healthy. It's not possible, right? If you're constantly facing that kind of challenge, you can't expect that from yourself. So that's not our expectation, but that doesn't mean we don't start at all, right? We do want to work on building our resilience.
Yeah.
So, something that I used to think resilience was this idea of really just pushing through, like whatever challenge, pushing through. And that's kind of how I went through like Xavier's also. And I thought I was like super resilient because I was able to push through so much. And then I realized resilience is actually, the huge part of resilience is being able to focus on recovery and rest, something I was totally ignoring. And that makes sense when you think about it, because when does your body realize it can deal with challenges? When you've gone through a challenge. So you've gone through the difficult part of it, but you've also recovered from it. So when you experience that rest and recovery, you build your capacity to deal with other challenges. So this is what we need to focus on right now. So, something that actually is going to help us collectively be really resilient, and one of our greatest strengths as humans is our ability to build connections with people. So, being able to connect with someone, to feel love, to express care, concern, and to receive that is something that really regulates the nervous system. It completely calms the nervous system down. So, understanding it in terms of that also, when you experience that connection, when you experience that kind of care and affection, and when you give it, you're releasing oxytocin, which is again something that is like an anti-stress kind of hormone, like it really calms the nervous system. And this is something that helps us individually to build these relationships, to be able to feel that sense of calm, but also as a society collectively, when we reach out in terms of community, we build these networks, where we start feeling safe. If you have a community that cares for each other, you individually start feeling safer, right? Like, okay, things may be shit right now, but I have this safe space. I have these people who are going to come to my help if I need to, and I will be able to help them. So we're building resources when we care for each other. And this is something I think we all really need to tap into and curate it for us individually. So one of the things that this pandemic has done is actually it's broken up a lot of systems of social systems that we had in place, because we can't physically meet a lot of people. And unfortunately, most of us are not living with the people who we consider our social support system. We're not living with the people who help us through the hard times. So it's all moved really online right now. But it is also, what's been amazing is that people have adapted to that so quickly. Like, look at what we're doing right now. We're kind of creating a safe space to have this conversation. Even. And I've seen, like, it's been now about 3 months or so since like India and like we've been under this lockdown and doing physical distancing. There have been so many ways people have been connecting. Like I've seen like there's like this Netflix party, or like watching movies together, or reading the same thing and talking about it. And this is something that's really great to tap into. Doing that with boundaries though, because it's also been something that I've heard and I felt it myself, where it can be really overwhelming to connect with your entire social network suddenly. That's not feasible. We were not even doing that before this, right? We weren't meeting all like 20 of our friends or whatever. It was just like one or two people maybe a week. So we need to figure out how to work with that right now when we can't meet these people. So some things that, we can do is um, have these interactions built into our routines. So figure out, the way you might meet a friend, maybe for dinner, maybe once a week on like a Saturday night or something. Figure out how you can do that over a virtual kind of date, where you get to have that conversation. Even if it's not a video call, you can sense changes in people's emotions through their voice, and that triggers your nervous system. Your when someone else is stressed out and we hear that stress or we're around that stress, even if we're not consciously doing it, our nervous system responds to it. Like, we also start looking around for that threat. We also feel like that heightened arousal. And the same thing works with safety. If our nervous system feels safe and we're calm, it has a ripple effect. It influences everyone we're interacting with.
Yeah.
And it's been wonderful to kind of see that also work through online basis. Like, when you have video calls, you're noticing your friends' facial expressions. You can tell if you said something that pissed them off. You will notice that.
Yeah.
You will notice the changes in their voice. And because so many of us have been using texting like very regularly, we also notice tones change when we text someone. So we are able to regulate our nervous system through these virtual means. And what's really important is to be able to tap into it right now. So when we tap into it, like I said, we can do it with certain boundaries in place. So, not kind of trying to do this with everyone, but maybe building that relationship with one or two people. I mean, that's my limit. Everyone has their own, like, some people want to have one interaction once a month, and that's fine, whatever works for you. Um, because it's about building, not only just having that conversation, but really building that relationship in the sense of being able to share anxieties, being able to share frustrations. When you realize, okay, my friend's also going through a hard time, it's not just me, right? It's like all of us, we're both going through it. It's also about sharing our joys and our strengths, because we get so much joy when we see someone we love going through something happy, right? Even like when we go through like pictures of people we love and we see like happy pictures, we start smiling. We are like able to regulate ourselves in that manner. So figuring out who you can build these relationships with, and on a community level, trying to like do maybe small things to express kindness and gratitude. So even if it's an interaction with your watchman who's been through such a stressful time right now, just having that conversation, maybe thanking them for it, or the delivery person. These small interactions is what's keeping our community healthy. And if we need to kind of sustain our mental health during this difficult time, it's something we really need to figure out how to tap into. So this is something I really like try to stress the importance of. But besides social interactions, and for everyone, social interactions isn't everything. There's so many of us who rather just be on our own, and there's so many things we can do for ourselves to feel more regulated and feel safer within our bodies. So I talk about nervous system so much because, like I was saying, mental health isn't just about the thoughts in your head. It's so much of what's going on in your body. So we need to work with brain body techniques. So we need to engage in movement. So people talk about yoga, tai chi, qigong, a lot of these movement practices that incorporate breathing as well. So these mindfulness practices is what's helping really regulate your nervous system. Also engaging in activities like craft and art, learning a new instrument. When you're engaging your different senses, you're able to stay rooted in the present moment.
Right.
So you're not focusing on the past, and you're not focusing on the worry about the future, or you're just focusing on that task in the moment. And that's so amazing for the nervous system. You're just present in that moment with that activity that you're doing. And these are the kind of things we need to add to our daily life. So if we need to look at this long term. It's not that you do all of these activities in one day or in a week and you change your lifestyle completely. I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. So start by figuring out maybe one or two activities that you can do. Even if, look at how much time you have. So really take stock of your day. Okay, so maybe I have a really hectic day. I'm doing like chores at home and I'm working. I only have like 15 minutes. That's okay. Let's start with 15 minutes. Pick one activity you want to do in those 15 minutes, whether it's meditation, whether it's interacting with someone, whether it's doing a hobby, and start there. Like I said, the goal is not to be 100% healthy. It's not possible right now, but it's about building our capacity to deal with the stress, with the stress. So that's why figuring out what are the small things we can add to our daily routine and making it a long-term practice. Um, in all of this, when we talk about safety and dealing with stress, I personally believe that therapy is a great source for that. But the reason I haven't really gotten into that is because I also know that therapy is not accessible for everyone, right? It's something that only if we have the privilege of having the financial, the time, resources, and internet connection and the space at home can we actually engage in that. So if you have access to that, then definitely figure out how you can work with your therapist to create this lifestyle for yourself. But if you don't have access to that, you can still figure out there's so many things you can do outside of that. So I really want to stress on the fact that it's a long-term practice. You're working on things that you can like continue to hold on to for years. Just like our physical health, as soon as we stop working on this, as soon as we stop, it's going to start deteriorating, right? You can't like work out when we work out and we stop working out, we expect changes in our body. We expect ourselves to then put on weight, not be as fit. But somehow when we go to therapy and we stop and then things start changing, we're also like, but why is that happening? It's happening because it needs to be an active process. You need to actively be able to maintain it. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. I think that was really great and totally agree. I think in such times, sustaining mental health is of utmost importance. And I think one thing that we need to acknowledge is like therapy is for everyone, regardless of whether you're going through something or not. I think just balancing that equilibrium becomes super crucial. So, with that, I think I'd like to ask you a question. But in case our audience has any questions, please send them in via the chat box. So, one thing I want to ask you is in India, people generally like attribute mental illnesses to like somatic symptoms. Like they don't come out of it, they'd say, like, okay, I'm suffering from a stomach pain or a headache, but they won't openly acknowledge, like, okay, I'm going through something. But now with like Empower and Deepika Padukone's TLL, there's so much like conversation about mental health going on. So what is your take on that? Like how do you analyze this changing trend?
I think there's definitely been a change in trend because you see what happens is when you start talking about something, you normalize it. Right. So the more people are talking about it, the less of stigma that's attached to it. When you see someone like Deepika Padukone come out and talk about her struggles, and you look up to her, and you really value her, you're going to not that normalizes the whole situation. It's not just a freak. When people used to like hide mental illness because they think it's like a weakness or something is wrong, but when you look at our society and the way it's structured, it's not it there's so many stressors that we experience on a daily basis. It's impossible to be 100% healthy all the time, and I think almost all of us are going to go through something or the other in our lifetime. So it's just about being able to talk about it. The more we talk about it, the more we normalize it. And I'm right now also seeing a shift between like only focusing on mental health when it comes to mental illness. Like this talk is about being able to actively sustain mental health. It's not just focusing on illness or treatment.
Right.
And that's also a really important shift, which is really great because then we're working towards a healthier society.
Right.
So, ma'am, my question to you is that since we're talking a lot about mental health, and do you believe that mental health should be accessible to all? So, how do we ensure that the mental health of people with disabilities and how therapists are sensitized towards treating such patients?
Yeah, so that's actually really important because I think this is what I realized when I was studying. Also, there was um, the kind of techniques that we studied in our textbooks and everything was only for a very privileged population. There wasn't enough of a focus on marginalized communities, on people experiencing disabilities and difficulties. And if you want to be able to be a therapist for these communities, you actually need to have enough knowledge about them. So a lot of it is going to be therapists being able to educate themselves about the kind of microaggressions that these communities and people with disabilities are facing, because our society is very ableist. From the languages we use, like a lot, I hear lame used so much, right? It's such an ableist slur, but it's so normalized because we don't have enough knowledge about these things. And as therapists, we need to have that knowledge if we want to be able to help someone on their healing journey. And we also have the we have the responsibility to educate others. um, so that's where a lot of the sensitization happens outside of our educational institutions. So it's a very individual responsibility of doing that.
Thank you. So what would like your recommendation be? Like any books or any movies that you can watch to just deal with stress and just remain like optimistic in such times? Like anything that you've personally done or
So I think that actually really depends from person to person. And what helps us, feel safer and calmer is when we see our ideas and our value systems resonate with
hmm,
other people. And especially so if when you're feeling stressed, and when I am also, I kind of reach out for TV shows or books that I feel really resonate with my value system. So like
right.
right now, I'm like binge watching like Broad City or Brooklyn Nine-Nine, because like these things make me feel safe. I know my value system is resonated in these
Hmm.
shows. So it's going to change from person to person. It's not going to be the same for everyone. So look for something like that. Look for something that you feel matches what you think, and try to consume that when you're super stressed out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, ma'am, we have a question from the audience. So the question goes like, if one would be close to parents like friend, so how do we express our anxieties or worries to them?
So how to express our anxieties and worries to our loved ones?
Yes, yes.
So this is a really tough one, because it has so much to do with how the person responds to you as well. Because if there are invalidating responses, it's going to make it harder. So you can start with maybe just one person who you feel the safest with, and start with a much smaller issue and see how they respond to that. So start with a smaller worry and anxiety, and when you have that conversation, you can actually start with expressing your intention of that conversation. So you can start by saying, I want to discuss something personal, something I'm going through, and I would like you to be able to support me.
Hmm.
Because a lot of people don't know how to respond, and that's because we haven't learned how to respond to this. So giving that direction to them is really helpful, because the people we love, they do want to be there for us. It's sometimes that we just don't know how to do that. So communicate the intention you're having that conversation with, and also communicate how you would like them to respond, and start small and see how that goes, and then figure out how to take it from there.
Thank you.
We have another question from Sanchi Mehra. She's asking, with so much happening around the world over and above the virus, what are some tips for the vicarious trauma we're facing,
Hmm.
especially through our online engagement?
Yeah, that's actually a really good one. That's something I have been trying to figure out personally, because I get very easily triggered by what's there. At the same time, I know I have to be able to have the kind of knowledge. I need to know what's going on in the world. I need to play a role in that as well.
Hmm.
So there's some things I've tried to figure out for myself, on how to deal with that. So protecting your energy is really important. If you're not doing okay, you're not going to be able to engage with the world. So if the news you're consuming is leading to dysregulation, first just focus on regulating yourself.
Hmm.
Um, and what you can do is, right now news is very accessible to us 24/7, which means at any point when we pick up our phones or we're watching the news, something can trigger us. So let's kind of space that out. So pick maybe 1 or 2 times in a day where you consume the news for a limited amount of time, and know that you are going to experience dysregulation when you're consuming that news. You're going to experience a stress arousal when you read a lot of what's going on, which is so disturbing. So engage in regulation strategies in that moment. So you can do it in a safe space. So maybe find a safe space in your house when you're consuming the news. Maybe do it with someone, with someone safe who can help. Y'all can talk about it and feel better and help each other feel better. Use breathing techniques in that moment. Use grounding. And if you find yourself super overwhelmed, disengage. You can come back to it. It's not going to help to, consume that when you're completely dysregulated, it's actually what's leading to so much apathy and desensitization. Apathy is just a result, I think, of us being so overwhelmed. We just don't have the resources to be empathetic anymore. So that's why, if we actually want to engage with the world, we need to first be able to regulate ourselves while we still continue to do that.
So, ma'am, this is like a really interesting question. So, we all know that getting psychology in Xavier's is really tasking, but of course, it's prestigious as well. So, how has Xavier's, helped you to pursue your career in psychotherapy? And if someone wants to pursue, then what's the next step once you graduate from Xavier's?
So I think Xavier's definitely does have that reputation, and I think that did help me initially with some internships. Like, there were some people who were impressed by that. Um, but I think what Xavier's really gave me and what's helped me the most has been the kind of people I interacted with in college, whether it was the professors or the students. And I still have great relationships from that college, because it was through these interactions I was able to, really formulate my ideas about how social justice is such an important part of therapy. And um, it's these relationships that have really helped me become the person I am. And what you're asking about the next steps, so I honestly was very lost after I jumped into like the master's program because I wasn't sure what to do. And I think there's something that helped me a lot is the reason I pursued psychology is because it really interested me. So my learning never stopped. Once the exams were done or anything, I was constantly trying to consume information, and I had, the kind of relationships I built with, my classmates. We all of us were so interested in it, so we continue to keep learning about it and educating ourselves outside, because our education systems are not enough. A lot of the information is also really outdated. So that's actually something that's been more helpful than anything else. And also going and getting as many internships as possible. What's really unfortunate about the field is that people are not going to pay you often when you get these internships, and that really sucks because your work is valuable. And I'm not sure how to navigate this space either, because it's not like you can't afford not to take up these internships or these jobs even if the pay is not that great. So try to figure out how you can get the most learning out of, whatever situation you're in, and then figure out how you can apply that for yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's something that I totally agree to, Rahat, because even I'm super grateful for, the people and the professors that the college has given me, and I certainly do cherish like
Yeah.
the relationships. But moving on, so we have one more question from Christine. She's
Hmm.
asking, self-love is something that's very important. Could you please tell us how shall one start loving themselves? Like,
Oh,
how can
that's
you be, I think, more accepting of yourself?
yeah. That's a really tough one, I think, for all of us, because the thing is, the only reasons we don't love ourselves and the reasons we're so critical of each other I mean, ourselves, is because the society is so critical. There are so many negative messages we're getting from the structures around us, from the people around us, that we internalize this. So something that has really helped me, and I've seen it help others, is to try to figure out where your criticism is coming from. So when you're being critical of your body, where is that coming from? And when you really look at that, you realize so much of it is coming from these unrealistic beauty standards and
Right.
messages you're getting from random people. Like, I know there's so many people who just like love commenting on your body or like commenting on your life, even when they're complete strangers.
Hmm.
And because we hear that so much and because we're exposed to that so much, we tend to internalize it. So first, really distancing the criticism from you. That criticism is not you, it's the external structures. And then figuring out, okay, if that's not me, how do I want to be able to engage with myself? And initially it's going to feel really strange to have loving messages or accepting messages that you say to yourself, because you're not used to it, but still continue to do so. And something that helps me is when I feel like I'm spiraling with some negative thought about myself, is I like to write that thought down, because it's not about pushing it away. Like, accept that that's there. write it down, and then I like to write down, okay, this is coming from XYZ. I've heard this being said by this person. I don't think this is me saying it. What would I like to say to myself instead? And then writing that down. I find the act of writing really useful because it's easier to just like get it out and then see it and then consume that information again. So self-love is a journey. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be like small steps that lead to you feeling a lot more confident and accepting of yourself. So you can start wherever. Start with the smallest possible message.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, there's another question from Javina. She says that as there are all members of family present at home, there are a lot of misunderstandings and anger issues. So how should one deal with them?
Yeah, that's been so tough for everyone because first of all, the spaces at home are not that big for most of us, and none of us are used to being home all the time.
Right.
So it really depends from situation to situation. There, if your family members are open to having a conversation about how things can be smoother, setting boundaries and rules, setting boundaries about, okay, this is how I would like you to communicate with me. I feel hurt when this is said. How can we work on this? If your family is open to that communication, then that is what you can do. And a lot of families are open to it, but then a lot of families are also not. And when all of us are in a heightened stress state, it's actually very difficult to have these conversations. So if your family is not open to that and you feel like there's a lot of aggression coming towards you, a lot of fights that are coming, focus on self-regulation. So, you know, often we get stuck in patterns of fight. So with your family members, you'll notice it's the same fight happening again and again. There's no solution to it. It's just y'all are both really agitated or angry or upset, and that's kind of playing out. So when you notice that happening, and sometimes the hardest part is noticing that it's happening, try to step away from the situation. So like try to go for a shower or just like go to the bathroom. Find whatever excuse, leave that situation, really focus on regulating yourself, because conversations to resolve conflict only happen when we're regulated, when we're feeling safe. So first focus on that and then figure out, okay, is this person going to be able to understand that I need them to do this? And then try saying it when you're feeling a little regulated that, hey, I know we had this fight like maybe even 5 days ago, and I want to just discuss this one thing. I would like it if you didn't say this to me because I felt hurt when that happened. Um, but a lot of times people are not receptive, so just try to like move away, regulate yourself, figure out how to contact the support system outside of your family, and complain to them like this is shit. And then like let them hear you out and like work on that.
Right. Thank you. So, as a therapist, I'm sure you come across, people from different walks of life. So, how do you maintain like some sort of personal reflexivity or get rid of your conscious bias, like when interacting with your clients? So, what do you personally do, basically?
Yeah, so this is something that's been it's continuing to be a huge unlearning, because I've grown up with all of the messages that society has given me, right? So we all grow up with that, and a lot of that unlearning is so much of working to educate yourself on what's going on, really consuming content, even like movies, books, for of different communities, like really understand that. So that's a huge part of it. And another part of it is when you are regulated, when you're working on your own health, it's actually easier for you to be able to interact with different ideas and different value
Right.
systems. As soon as we're stressed out, we're only focused on our value system and we're only able to really work on that. So regular therapy for me is actually a huge part of being a therapist, because that's a space where I get to work on myself, figure out what my ideas are, really reflect on that. A lot of journaling, and that's why I said that the kind of relationships I built in Xavier's were so important to me, because conversations with these people also really helped me. All of us are constantly trying to figure out, navigate this world and learn more. So it's really,
Right.
as a therapist, it's so open to constant. You need to be very open to learning all the time.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you. So you mentioned in your talk that like things have moved online now, and you've got into online therapy. So what are some of the challenges you're facing via online therapy? Like, how do you think it's as effective to deal with isolation and stress as compared to like physical therapy?
Yeah, so thing is, I have actually been going for online therapy myself for way before this pandemic. So
Hmm.
it was actually something I didn't think was very effective. And when I started working with my therapist, I started offline, and then she moved online, and I kind of had to move online. And I was really upset about that. But once I started that, I realized it was working the same way. So something that happens, and as a therapist, when I am working on a session with someone, a lot of it is being really attuned to their non-verbals. So
Hmm.
I've noticed now when I've moved completely online, I am really focused on their facial expressions. I'm really focused on their tone of voice. I'm really trying to figure out their state through that. And that is what you're doing in offline sessions as well. It's just that the focus has changed maybe only, to their face and their tone of voice.
Hmm.
Besides that, there are the conversations you have remain the same. You're able to create safety even in online communications, and you'll notice that with your friends, right? You still feel safe with them when you talk to them
Yes,
online.
absolutely.
So that's also working in the therapeutic relationship. But there are definitely challenges. So
Hmm.
one thing I really hated as a client when my therapist moved online was that I lost that space, that physical space that I was going to. And I do miss that. I really do miss that, because that was me taking out time going to this physical space that was outside of my family structures, outside of everyone else. So that is something that we're missing out on in this online space. And for whoever who's seeking online therapy, if you do have the space, which I mean most of us don't, but if somehow you do, if you can create a space, a specific space that you seek online therapy, and
Hmm.
making that a safe space. A lot of like therapist office try to create a physical space that's safe, that feels comforting. So
Yeah.
when you seek therapy, you can try doing that for yourself, like figuring out maybe having a scented candle or a soft toy with you,
Hmm.
keeping a glass of water, having tissues next to you. So you become responsible for creating that space for yourself.
Yeah.
um, and also connectivity is like a serious issue. I, as a therapist, get really stressed before sessions. Sometimes I'm like, oh, please, my internet work. And
Hmm.
thankfully it has. What I've been doing is, I keep a huge buffer between my sessions, so in case there's a connectivity issue, then
Hmm.
I can extend the session, and then it's not so much of an issue.
Yeah.
So, ma'am, previously we were talking about self-regulation. As you said, it's really important to continuously regulate yourself. So, I think nutrition also plays a really important role in
Yeah.
this. So, what is your take on it?
Yeah, 100%. So, like I was saying, it's the nervous system, right? So everything, all our interactions, all our life experiences, including our nutrition, is affecting our body. So eating healthy is a huge part about feeling healthier physically and mentally. And that, because like, and the one of the things I've noticed, like for myself, I've been trying to like regulate my sugar. I love anything sweet. So before this, I was just consuming a lot of sugar, and I decided to kind of cut that down. And a lot of people, when they cut that down, they notice that you feel a little more energetic after a point. So the changes in your diet also affect your mental health.
Hmm.
And that's something you can actually speak to a nutritionist about also, if there's a big change that you do want to make.
Right. Yeah, I think definitely. I totally agree with all that you're saying. And even regarding like the online therapy part of it, I think that might cause some additional stress, right? Because I know when my Wi-Fi doesn't work, I'm super stressed, and that adds
Yeah.
on to like this whole level of extra like pressure. So, moving on, I have one personal question to ask you. So,
Hmm.
studying psych in the 12th grade, what I realized was like the textbook would say an eclectic approach is the best approach to therapy because it combines different approaches. But I'm curious to know, like, how does that actually work? And
Hmm.
why did you choose neuropsychology specifically?
Hmm.
And like, what made you like basically venture into that aspect?
So, I actually, when I was studying, I learned that an eclectic approach was not the best option, and you really need to stick to one specific theory. And that's how I started out, just focusing on CBT.
Okay.
And I think what led me to focus on neuropsychotherapy and focus on a trauma-informed care is because, at the clinic I was working on, the therapist and I started realizing that for a lot of clients, the CBT approach was really not working. And when we were trying to figure out what to do about that, that's kind of when we stumbled onto this trauma-informed care. And
Hmm.
when you really understand that it's your nervous system that's being affected, you also realize that everyone is going to have a unique experience. So one technique can't work for everyone. So it depends on your comfort. Like I may be comfortable with certain techniques. Like I really like to use breath work or grounding as part of my sessions, but there are some clients who completely reject that.
Okay.
And as a therapist, you have to respect your clients' knowledge about themselves. So it's when you're supporting someone's healing, as a therapist, I think you need to use whatever techniques work for that person. It can't be, okay, this works, this is what works for me, so I'm going to push that onto you. And it's also, when you're using this approach, is also about actually realizing, okay, these are my limitations. So you realize that I'm trying out all of this. You're not going to use techniques that you're not comfortable with. Like, there are certain things I still don't have any knowledge about. And if that's what's going to help my client and I don't know that, I need to refer the client somewhere else. So really understanding all of that is why I've been using different eclectic approaches and focusing on how life experiences are affecting the nervous system, the brain, and then having that knowledge actually has been so powerful because when your therapist tells you to do an activity, if you know why they're telling you to do that,
Right.
what's actually going on, you're going to feel more motivated to do it. You're really when you understand yourself better, it also kind of helps with cultivating compassion for yourself. When you understand that so much of your critical thoughts are not you, it's this society, that's what's happened, and it's just created this pattern in your brain that's your go-to thought process.
Hmm.
When you understand that it's not something you've consciously chosen, you can then find compassion to be like, okay, but now I want to consciously choose a different pattern. So
Right.
I found that really explaining things to clients in like biological and neuroscience terms has also helped them understand that it's not just like all in your head, like we keep
Hmm.
saying. So that's what's led me to this approach.
Right. That's really interesting. So we have one more question from Mansi, and she's asking, how serious is a therapist's oath of confidentiality? That's an
So
interesting
that's
one.
very, very serious. And I completely understand that question coming up because you're trusting someone with like your deepest thoughts and like all your secrets. And confidentiality is something your therapist should bring up with you right in the beginning, because that's part of feeling safe, right? When you're talking to someone, you need to feel that what you're saying is completely confidential. There are two instances that therapists break confidentiality, and that's when they believe that you're in danger to yourself and or
Okay.
danger to someone else.
Hmm.
And even that is something that it's a professional judgment in the moment that we take very seriously, because
Hmm.
confidentiality is like a foundation for therapy. So we're
Right.
not going to break it unless we actually believe that something might happen if we don't break it.
Hmm.
um, and this is a conversation you can have with your therapist, and you should be having with your therapist right in the beginning, that okay, will you break confidentiality? How do you can even ask them, like I asked my therapist, where do you store your notes? Is it online? Do you write it? Like I was like very curious about these things.
Yeah.
And I also realized that because I've had this therapeutic relationship for like about a year now, I noticed that even though I thought I was being very like self-disclosing in like the beginning, I wasn't really. It took me time to be able to feel like completely safe and like
Hmm.
that this is not going to go anywhere, to then start talking about a lot of other things.
Right.
So yeah, if you're worried about confidentiality, definitely have that conversation.
Right. So, ma'am, in this like in these tough times, you've seen that domestic violence has increased against women like drastically. It's not something new, of course, but why? What do you see as a therapist? What is your take on this entire situation? Like, why is it happening that even women have now started becoming vocal because they cannot, endure that so much violence coming to them? So, what is your take on it as a therapist?
So this like you said, it's not a new phenomenon. um, if people are talking about it a lot more right now, that's because as a society we're now beginning to create spaces for women to talk about it.
Hmm.
The only reason women were not talking about it earlier is because there was never a space to, and there still isn't a space to,
Yes.
because we tend to view it as a family matter. And when we talk about domestic violence, we really focus on really gruesome things, and that really sucks because that means only those things deserve our attention. But there's so many other instances leading up to that violence. It doesn't um, have to be something really gruesome to allow us to like call out the abuser. And for women to speak up, it's really hard because all the power, they don't usually have the power, right? That violence is coming, that abuse is coming from someone who has more power. So even when there's a space to talk about it, an individual still may not feel safe, because if your financial power lies in someone else's hand, if you're living in the house with someone, if you have kids with someone, it's really hard. And then there's so much judgment when you people talk about what's going on in their relationship. So I think out here, something that's important is that as a society, we really need to create safe spaces for women. We really, as a society, we need to call out abusers. We need to step in when we see something like that happening, because the person going through it can't do that usually. It takes a lot of strength to be able to do that. So if someone does do that, we need to believe them instantly. We need to rush to their support. We need to be able to extend a lot of compassion and kindness to them, because only when we do that, when we create this safe space for people to talk about it, will people be able to talk about it. And there also needs to be, legal systems in place to help people, because even if there's a safe space, even if my neighbors are supporting me, if I'm still tied to this person, if I can't leave, what good is it going to do? It's going to harm me so much more to speak about it. So this is again why I believe, mental health professionals need to have social justice as part of their practice. It's not about just what's happening in the therapy session, right? If I believe that this is something that's wrong, if I believe the patriarchy is affecting my clients, then I need to talk about it outside of the sessions as well. I need to figure out how I can contribute to changing that.
Yeah.
That was really great answer, ma'am. So, ma'am, we'll end the session here because of lack of time. But we don't have any questions as of yet. But, ma'am, thank you so much for joining us. It was really an
Yes.
insightful session, and talking on such a sensitive matter, which is gaining so much attention by every passing day. It's really important to talk on such a important matter. I would also like to thank our principal, Dr. Rajendra Shinde, for giving us this opportunity to take on these series. I would also like to thank Neha ma'am, Sam sir, and especially Keshav sir, without whom the session wouldn't have been possible, for helping out with the logistics. Last but not the least, thank you to all the audiences for your patient hearing, and we hope that you register for future events as well. And I would request all of you all to switch on your
Yeah.
cameras so that we can click a picture.
Thank you so much, Rahat, for joining us. It was really great. And I think I'm sure we learned a lot. And you really decodified it very well, like for even non-psych students. Like it was, I think, something super relatable. And like the theme of our topic is sustaining mental health. I'm sure the tips that you gave us, just engaging in an activity or doing something, just regulating yourself is something that I think all of us need to acknowledge and take away from this session. So on behalf of SIC and the college, I'd again like to thank you. And yeah, it's great to have like an alumni join us.
Yeah.
So yeah, we hope we can have some future events with you as well. Thanks once again for joining in, and thanks to our audience for joining in. Do send us feedback on sic.xaviers@gmail.com. And yeah, do follow Rahat on Instagram, Rahat underscore therapist, right?
Yeah, Rahat
Yeah,
Sanghavi underscore
she has a
therapist.
great Instagram profile. So yeah, just follow her. And yeah, thanks guys. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye,
Pritika and
Rahat.
Ashley.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.